I'd like to ask the Reverend Michael Hopkins, the Vicar of the Spire Church in Farnham, to lead us in a few moments of reflection. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I invite you to reflect quietly or to join me in praying as you feel comfortable. Loving God, we thank you for John's service as Mayor and Gillian's service as Mayoress, for Penny's service as Deputy Mayor. We thank you for John and Paul's service as leaders in the last council. We thank you for the time that all councillors have given for the benefit of the community and for the good they have done in encouraging volunteers, supporting charities, and building up the common life. We ask your blessing upon them. We thank you for all who served on this council in the last 4 years and for all who offered themselves for election. We pray particularly for new councillors and for unsuccessful candidates, especially those who served for many years. We ask your blessing upon all who will serve as councillors in the coming years, for the officers and staff of the council, and especially this evening for our incoming Mayor and Deputy Mayor, for our leader and cabinet. Thank you, God, for our wonderful borough, the many towns and villages and the opportunities here. Thank you for the activity, the trade and the culture. Help us to break down barriers between people and build up our common life. May it be the pride of Waverley that all our citizens are treated with respect and cared for in their need. Help us to create a community which is fair, free and open. We think of those around the world who need our prayers, especially people in Ukraine and Russia, people in Israel and Palestine. May Waverley be a borough filled with people who care for our sisters and brothers around the world and who encourage peace. Loving God, we offer you all our prayers, spoken and silent, and I invite those of us who wish to join in saying together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much, Michael. Would you like to be seated, everyone, please? If you'd like to stay for a while, Michael, you're more than welcome. Should we get a little frisky or tiresome, I know you will beat a hasty retreat. Right, well, this is colloquially called mayor making, so I suppose let's get on with it. We will take item 1, which is election of the mayor for the year 2023-24. Do I have a nomination?
Mr. Mayor, it is my absolute pleasure and honour to nominate Councillor Penny Rivers for the position of Mayor of Waverley, and I do believe I have a seconder.
Apologies, happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to speak in favour of your candidate, Councillor Follows?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, honoured guests, fellow members. Almost 7 years ago now, in a fit of political pique, I emailed the Godalming branch of the Liberal Democrats to know a little bit more about what they do and if I could help. And I received a short email back from an individual that some of you know called Heather Huller that went something a little like this. Go to a house called Amity. Ask at the door for Penny Rivers. She will look after you. No amount of rereading that email made it sound any less ominous. And my father is a fan of Stephen King, so the whole thing with Amity got me off on the wrong foot to start with. And then I lost the house. And anyway, when I did get there, I quickly found, as is often the case when you arrive at Amity, I have to say, and have learned since, that you have a glass of wine in your hand and you're talking to a bunch of total strangers about all the things that were wrong in the world and what we'd all do about them if we ever had the chance. And I'm very pleased to say right now, as I'm sure you are, Mr. Mayor and Madam Deputy Mayor, to see many of those individuals actually in this room tonight for the first time. There are some people that you meet that you very quickly forget that you haven't known them for your entire life. And Penny is one of those people. To think I've only known you 7 years at this point, and your husband, Paul, is frankly to me astounding even to this day. When I was at your house that first time, and certainly many times since, I recall seeing all of the evidence around me of the work that you do in the community and the work that you've done in the community. You've been a councillor many times, as I know Councillor Townsend will elaborate on. But when you looked around the house, you saw things which clearly showed you not just talking about the values, but defending them and actually taking action to defend them. And so you look around and you see things like Iraq war protests, you see pictures from your work in the community, you see things that children have painted. There's a wonderful picture of you and Paul in mayoral garbs in one of the times that you were mayors of Godalming on the wall as well. And yes, even a Christmas card from Mr. Jeremy Hunt, as I now know is a common thing. Now, before 2019, Penny had been mayor of Godalming twice, and she was re-elected as town mayor for the third time just before the pandemic. Now, this quickly became effectively 4 times. Now, you'll see many of the Godalming councillors from that era. In fact, you yourself, Madam Deputy Mayor, have one on you as well, and I have one right here. A little badge, and I'm wearing mine tonight. And for those that can't see it, the badge depicts the symbol of our town of Godalming, the pepper pot, bedecked with rainbow bunting under a rainbow. And when Mayor of Godalming, Penny commissioned the design during the pandemic, and every Zoom meeting we had as a councillor, nearly everyone had an A4 copy in the background, and I certainly did. And over time, as we managed to be slowly let out from the pandemic, you would see this in a few windows here and there, and then a dozen windows. And at one point, because of course there wasn't a great deal to do on your walks around if you didn't possess a dog, as I didn't, to start counting the number of times you see that image. And it was hundreds and hundreds of houses in Godalming. And it's because it was a symbol of hope, and the things that you represented in our community was driving that. And I think people recognized it. Now, Penny has been, I was trying to find a polite way of putting this. You've been not just a voice, but a megaphone for those who have no voice. You've been a champion of residents of all ages. You've been compassionate, progressive role model for many, many residents and many councillors. And I'm certainly privileged to count myself in that number. Whether it's supporting Black Lives Matter or being out there leading the charge at Surrey Pride, or not just talking about helping Ukrainian refugees, but taking them into your home. Your actions always speak louder than your words. Now, Penny is respected far beyond the boundaries of Godalming, and here we are tonight in Waverley Borough Council, surrounded by colleagues from Farnham, Hazelmere, Cranley, and all of our villages. I wish to now commend to you the nomination of Councillor Penny Rivers. She is both a mentor and a friend, not just to me, but to many of you here. And I cannot think of a more appropriate representative to start this new council and to represent not just Godalming, but all of Waverley than Councillor Penny Rivers. I commend it to you and move now to my seconder, Councillor Townsend.
Councillor Townsend, would you
Thank
like
you.
to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Honoured guests and members as well. I'd like to second everything that Councillor Follows just said. And I would also like to say how absolutely delighted and honoured I am as well to second the appointment of Councillor Penny Rivers as Mayor of Waverley. She, as Paul has alluded to, she's probably one of the most qualified people to hold this role. And during my time here, she has served as Godalming Town Mayor a record 4 times, as Paul said. So there's no doubt that she will bring that experience, as well as her considerable personal leadership qualities to this role. Penny was born in Jamaica and at a very early age absorbed social justice into her very core. As a very young child, she spent time sitting on various neighbours' porches, listening to adults' conversations and becoming acutely aware of the inequalities that surrounded her. At the age of 7, after meeting Sir Alexander Bustamante, she announced to her parents that she had met the most famous person in the world. For those of you who are not aware, Alexander Bustamante was the first Prime Minister of Jamaica after independence in 1962. He was an ardent campaigner for workers' rights and was imprisoned for standing up for those beliefs. He founded the first trade union in Jamaica and later the Jamaica Labour Party. To a young and even now as a more mature Penny, he was someone she held in high esteem and whose values are as important, if not more today, to her as they were back then. Everyone who knows Penny will be aware of her passionate campaigning to confront discrimination wherever she finds it, whether that is successfully fighting against the short-sighted closure of Green Oak Primary School back in 2018, as the Godalming North Ward councillor, supporting the growing number of local families who would have been greatly disadvantaged by this action, or, as Paul has said, enthusiastically promoting and opening Pride in Surrey, hosted here in Godalming in 2021. I know that hosting Pride in Surrey was one of Penny's proudest moments, and that she was equally delighted and proud that Godalming was the first town in the borough to receive a Pride Rainbow Crossing, a public and fitting symbol to celebrate and promote diversity and inclusion in Waverley. Looking ahead, I know that Penny intends to campaign tirelessly for 20's Plenty for roads where people live, as I know that this is one of the most important matters that she is dedicated to championing across the borough. And she has my, and I know many other members, wholehearted support with this. I do wonder if the young Penny sitting on her neighbour's porch could have envisaged how her formative years will lead her to this position now, as a passionate and respected community leader representing all of our residents, including those who are the most disadvantaged in our society. There is no doubt that Penny, ably assisted by her consort, Councillor Paul Rivers, sorry, too many Pauls. Sorry, too many Pauls and so little time, apologies.
Well, we have a clergyman here ready, surely.
Where is Councillor Paul Rivers? Somewhere. Anyway, she will bring caring and compassion to her role as mayor. And this will be a huge benefit to this council and to the many organisations and residents that she will be working with and visiting during her term. But she will be no pushover. Anyone that has been at a meeting with her will know that Penny has a look. Watch out. It will be subtle. You will have an early warning sign, a raised eyebrow or two, depending on the severity of your misdemeanours, but a clear sign that you are pushing things a bit too far. Ignore this at your peril, as Penny will not stand for any nonsense. Whilst Penny will be approachable, inclusive and fair at all times, her strong principles and calm presence will ensure that meetings will be run smoothly and in an orderly fashion. I know that Penny believes deeply in the ethical standards of public office holders as outlined in the Nolan Principles, and these will no doubt be a clear steering influence on her mayoral year and her chairmanship of these meetings. Finally, I would like to thank Penny, my personal thanks to her for her support for me, for her kindness, for her guidance, and above all for her unstinting dedication to all of our residents. Thank you for being you and for very best wishes in, I know, what will be a very successful year ahead, and I hope enjoyable for you too.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? Then the golden question, are there any other nominations? In that case, Council, is it agreed that Penny Rivers will be our mayor for the next year? Agreed. Thank you very much. I therefore declare Penny Rivers to be the mayor of Waverley for the current and starting council year. And I will now go and give her some pretty garments to wear. Thank you.
Please rise while the mayor leaves the chamber. Thank you. There will now be a short break while the mayor robes. Councillors and guests, please rise to receive the new Mayor of Waverley, Councillor Penny Rivers.
I, Penny Rivers, having been elected to the office of the Mayor for the Borough of Waverley, hereby declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfill the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Waverley Borough Council in the performance of my functions of that office. Please be seated, everyone. And now I have a little speech for you. Not to be expected, I think, not to be, you would expect such a thing. Thank you, Paul Follows. I say that carefully. And thank you, Liz, for your very kind words. And thank you all for entrusting me with this honour, the honour of being Mayor of Waverley for the civic year 2023-4. It is indeed an honour. Its purpose is obviously to chair this council, yes, but more so, I think, it is to bring people together. We are better when we recognise our need of each other. We are better when we support each other. We are better when we don't walk by on the other side, and better when we speak up and stand with those in need and with those who feel vulnerable. As the great Jamaican singer Bob Marley sang, get up stand up for your rights and for the rights of others. Our community is indeed diverse and different, and the Waverley motto is Oppida Rusque Una, that is, towns and countryside in unity. Unity of purpose is foundational, for we represent everyone in Waverley. In these climate-aware times in which we live, we understand that monocultures are not sustainable, that biodiversity is healthy, and so it is with people. We can do so much more when we work together for those we represent. And we represent those who voted for us. We represent those who didn't vote for us. And we represent those who didn't vote at all. We represent young, old, able-bodied, and those with disabilities. We serve homeowners, and we serve our tenants. We represent people of all races, those of faith and those of none, those born here and those like me who have made Britain their home. We represent male, female, and all our LGBTQ+ brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, and children, for we do indeed have pride in our community. We also have now the additional responsibility of care for those who have left war-torn countries and who live amongst us. For our Ukrainian friends, Slava Ukraini, Slava Ukraini. We may not always agree on every policy or idea, but to quote lifelong campaigner Bono, after a conversation with the late, great Harry Belafonte, he said, "The simple and profound truth is that we do not have to agree on everything if the one thing we agree on is important enough." I'm sure you too agree that we love living in Waverley and that we commit ourselves to working for this place, for its people, and for our planet. Thank you all, and back to the agenda. And now may I call for nominations for the appointment of Deputy Mayor. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased and honoured to nominate Councillor John Ward for the important role of Deputy Mayor. I believe I have a seconder.
I'm delighted to second the nomination of John Ward as Deputy Mayor.
Members, would you indicate whether you are in support of the election for Deputy Mayor of Councillor John Ward? Thank you. And now it is my privilege to present badges and gifts to the outgoing and the incoming Councillor John Ward and Mrs. Ward. John, I'm just going to pass it to you. And a little bit. And I'll take them.
I, John Ward, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor of the Borough of Waverley, hereby declare that I take that office upon myself, and I will duly and faithfully fulfill the duties of it, according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Waverley Borough Council in the performance of my functions in that office. Signed this 23rd day of May, 2023. You're doing that. No, I don't know. You're now presenting flowers. Fellow councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to keep this very short because I think you might be hearing from me again later. Thank you for showing your confidence to elect me into this position. But I must say I'm eternally grateful for the support given to me last year by the lady who used to sit on my right hand, and it was now you had the good sense to elect as your mayor. May I congratulate you, Madam Mayor, and hope that I can be as helpful to you as you were to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, agenda item number 5 is the vote of thanks to the retiring mayor. This is going to be Councillor Paul Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your elevation. Just over 1 year ago, I proposed that we elect my colleague and coalition partner, Councillor John Ward, as our mayor. Now, Councillor Ward, so my apologies. If memory serves, I actually think I said some very nice things back then, but I wanted to warn you all at the time that we were entering a year of minor tyranny from the dais, but more on that later. Councillor Ward and his wife, Gillian, have had a very busy year, and I think we could have anticipated that John would make the most of the opportunity to represent Waverley and to support his charities, and he has been extremely active in the community during this year, meeting people, but this has also been a year that has been very much influenced by events. Our entire community has been touched by those displaced by war in Ukraine, and I know that, John, you are as proud as I am that the role that Waverley has played in supporting our new residents. And it was a privilege to hear you address members, officers, guests, and members of the public to renew our resolve to stand by them. Following the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, when John was leader of the council and I was deputy, he and I were introduced to a rather odd-sounding document that we then started hearing an awful lot, called Operation Bridge. Now, other than the fact that it dealt with the death of our monarch, it also dealt with the death of the mayor. So I think a small existential crisis was also on the cards when we were reading this. But it was something that we ended up having to take rather more seriously than we thought that we might. Now, Councillor Ward has undertaken a role which at some point we obviously knew a mayor of Waverley would need to undertake as our civic leader during a period of mourning for Her Majesty the Queen following her death, and then in reading and leading the proclamation of our new king. I know you were proud to undertake these duties on our collective behalf, and you undertook them with due respect, dignity, and solemnity, and thank you. And to conclude, as the jabot once again gives way to the cravat and the rather exotic tie, I did predict a minor tyranny, and certainly speaking on behalf of the absent Councillor Williams tonight in particular, I don't think we've been disappointed by that, have we? And in the spirit of any minor tyranny worth its salt, he's back. And it's nice to see you shift from my perspective on once in a while to the left, very slightly. Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councillor John Ward, his consort Gillian Ward, thank you for your honourable service to this borough, and I commend this vote of thanks to Council and hand over to my seconder, Councillor Michael Goodridge.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it gives me great pleasure to second the vote of thanks for Councillor John Ward, who I've known for many years. And he now puts himself in the situation of putting himself forward to bat again. So that we look forward to that. Having been mayor myself over 20 years ago, I know the amount of work involved. And I'm sure this year was no exception. And in addition, of course, it was a very eventful year, as referred to by Councillor Follows. You've now joined the distinguished club, which I founded, of those who've been deputy mayor twice. And next year, you'll form your own club for those that have been mayor twice. You're a glutton for punishment, but you've clearly enjoyed the last 12 months, and we are looking, I'm sure, we look forward to your second term. And I also thank not only yourself, but also the Mayoress Gillian for all the work that she's done in the borough in the last year, and for you, John, for keeping us in order. As Paul Follows has said, cravats can now return, colourful ties can now return, and cruises can be more plentiful, at least until May 24, when you'll have to put them a little on hold again. But thank you, John, very much for your year, and we wish you a slightly slower year to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge.
I would like to.
Councillor Ward, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be delighted to. Thank you both, my proposer and seconder, for your cross-party support continuing from the time you proposed and seconded me a year ago until now. I hope you'll all bear with me for a few reminiscences on the more striking aspects of the year. When taking on the position of mayor, I could not have imagined the historic events that would come to pass, which have already been referred to. I knew the Platinum Jubilee would fall in my year, but the death of our late Queen was unexpected, and the sheer emotion of reading the proclamation of acceptance of the new King will live with me forever. For me, one of the most enjoyable events was my civic service, which was described in the paper as 200 supporters, a dozen mayors, and a bishop. It was a wonderful event at the start of the mayoral year, which was arranged by Becky and Alice, to whom my sincere thanks. And I would urge all councillors to attend my successor's civic service, which is a wonderful event at the start of the year to show support for our elected civic head. Still on the religious front, I had an audience with His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmed, the worldwide leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslims, whose young people do so much to help us across our borough. We attended the installation of the new High Sheriff at Guildford Cathedral, an impressive and historic ceremony, but it also gave us the opportunity to view the Knife Angel, a massive sculpture made from knives handed in during an early amnesty. The sheer size of that sculpture gives you a powerful reminder of the problem that we have in society with sharp objects in the hands of people who shouldn't have them. The visit of the newly created Duke of Edinburgh to Farnham to plant the 70th tree in the Queen's Jubilee Walk was an historic event at which he spent some time chatting to a centenarian war hero who just happens to live in one of the care homes of which my mayoress is a trustee. Coming from army families, Gillian and I were at Sandhurst last night and have also attended a number of forces events, with the Albahira silent toast and the presentation of Minden Day roses at the PWRR being the most memorable. Another highlight was my charity concert in Frensham Heights School, which showcased the local talent of the taiko drummers, the Demeric School of Dance, as well as the wonderful rock choir, all of whom appeared without charging us. This was brilliantly organized by my PA, Chloe, who has taken on every task with enthusiasm and determination, and has always made sure I have the information I needed, and most importantly, the places I was due to visit had the information that they needed. I also need to thank Tom Horwood as Chief Executive, Paul Follows, my successor as leader, and Peter Clark, his deputy, who have all played their part in making the years run smoothly. Not forgetting the two previous leaders of the Conservative opposition, Julia Potts and Stephen Mulliner, who, despite being on the opposite side of the political divide, were unfeignedly helpful and courteous. In any organization, there is a go-to person, the one who knows about everything and to whom everyone looks for help and advice. For my time on the council, that has been Fiona. Thank you, Fiona, for all you have done for us. Finally, and most importantly, I must thank my mayoress. Emotional bit. My wife of almost 49 years, if we manage to survive another 10 days. Without her support as consort at the events, they wouldn't have been very enjoyable. Some of them would have been terribly boring. And since my eye operation, without her as unpaid borough chauffeurs, it just would not have been possible. Thank you, my love. Here in the council chamber, I have tried to regulate the proceedings with humour and tolerance, rarely having to take the iron fist out of the velvet glove. So to you and all of your predecessors on the council who have lived through what the leader of the council then described as the age of tyranny, I hope it was not too bad, and my thanks for your tolerance and friendship.
Thank you, John. And so now we move to the business part of this evening's meeting, and we will try to keep it as concise as possible and on the point because we have a full public gallery. So agenda item number 6, apologies for absence. Susan, are there any?
Madam Mayor, apologies have been received from councillors Zoe Barker-Lomax, Andrew Law and Steve Williams.
Thank you. And the minutes, agenda item number 7, the minutes. Members, are you happy to confirm the minutes of the council meeting which took place on the 21st of March?
Agreed.
Thank you. I will sign them later. Agenda item number 8, declarations of interest. Fiona, are there any interest declared?
None declared, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9 is announcements. I just have a few. Just to say that the charities that I will be championing this year are the Meath. The Meath is a specialist residential care home for adults who live with complex epilepsy. And you will see and hear a bit more from some of their stars later on. It is also wonderful to see our dear friend Peter Andrews here with us this evening. Thank you very much for coming, Peter. And also Skillway. Skillway teaches crafts and practical and social skills to those who find school difficult. At the last meeting of the previous administration, leader Councillor Paul Follows brought proceedings to a dramatic close by bringing down the gavel so heavily that it broke. It has been repaired, but Matthew, one of Skillway's young carpenters, has made a new one, and this will keep order in this new administration. So thank you, Skillway. Please put Friday, October the 6th in your diaries for a fundraising evening thanks to Charterhouse, hosted by Charterhouse School. So that's Friday, October the 6th. And the civic service, the highlight of Councillor John Ward's year. My civic service will be on Sunday, July the 2nd at 10 a.m. in St. John's Church, Farncombe, thanks to the rector, James Ratu. So thank you all. And now we come to the election of the leader of the council. And I call for nominations for that position. I think it's Councillor Merriweather. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My congratulations to you and to Councillor Ward. I am delighted to nominate Councillor Paul Follows as leader of the council for 2023 to 27. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
I'm not sure. Well, okay, I will do it. I'm happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And are there any other nominations? I think not. So may I confirm Councillor Paul Follows as leader of the council for the period 2023 to 2027. Councillor Follows. Would you like to make any announcements?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is usually customary for new leaders of the council after the elections to talk a little bit about what the administration is going to do. I'm going to start with your own quote. We can do so much more when we work together. Words I think this new Rainbow administration can live by. It is my intent to introduce our programme and to appoint the council executive. But before I do that, I would just like to start by thanking all of you here for your continued trust and support, and to all the officers of this council for all of their work over the last 4 years. I was first elected here late 2017, and in terms of political groups, I was alone here, save for a small group of Farnham residents, some of which I've been pleased to know for that whole time. In the background, I've been able to count on a number of other people for wider support, guidance and friendship from multiple parties. And some of you are here in this room sitting as councillors, and others of you are up in the public gallery. For their work and support over the last few years, I particularly want to thank the leadership of the Farnham Residents Group, the Green Group and the Labour groups here in Waverley, but also Councillor Rivers, both Councillors Rivers, Councillor Liz Townsend, Councillor Mark Merriweather of the Liberal Democrats, Councillors Ward and Clark of the Farnham Residents, Councillor Steve Williams, Councillor Claire Waitman and Councillor Claire Mathis of the Greens, and Councillor Nick Palmer and former Councillor Richard Ashworth of Labour. You are all fundamental to this moment and the continuation of this alliance. And we all put aside our partisan blinders to forge a new path together for the common good. We stood up to opposition both within and without, and we moved forward together. Now, there are national challenges ahead for those of us that choose cooperation over competition, and there will be setbacks. But I'm firm in my belief that this is the only way forward until we have a fair voting system, and we must stand united as we do here today. We were not universally successful, but we must keep faith in what we do because we know that cooperation is the only way to truly change and support our towns, our borough, our county, and ultimately our country. But now the elections are over, and it's my hope that, at least for a time, we can put down our collective arms, as far as practical, across this chamber and find ways to work together, all parties. When considering the multiple crises impacting not only Waverley, but the country at large, and in particular the ones that directly touch what we do here in this chamber as part of the local government realm, I'm reminded of some words of US President Abraham Lincoln. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. Now, I personally believe that local government is a place to come together and act as an engine of change. It is my aim to deliver upon our shared manifesto elements: sustainable transport, enhanced training provision, directly investing in our high streets, building more and better sustainable housing, shoring up our finances through local Waverley effort and through collaboration, and making sure that everything we do reflects a true recognition of the climate emergency, and it is at the core of each and everything that we do. We can and will do our best to protect Waverley from the depredations of national planning policy and perverse fossil fuel extraction. We will give support to those struggling through a near perpetual cost of living crisis, and we will strive to use all of the levers at our disposal to build opportunity everywhere. I will conclude my remarks this evening, Madam Mayor, by appointing my new executive. Councillor Mark Merriweather, Councillor Liz Townsend, Councillor Paul Rivers and Councillor Victoria Keel of the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Steve Williams of the Green Party, Councillor Nick Palmer of the Labour Party, Councillor Kika Mirrlees, Councillor Tony Fairclough and Councillor Peter Clark of the Farnham Residents, and Councillor Clark will also serve as Deputy Leader of this Council. Full and revised portfolio holder roles will be distributed to all members by the end of the week. Madam Mayor, honoured guests, thank you for indulgence tonight as we crack on with more business. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. We now come to agenda item number 12, the establishment of committees for the ensuing year. Please note there are a couple of corrections to the report. The recommendation should refer to paragraphs 4.7 and 4.8, and there is a transposition of two figures in the third column of the table at paragraph 4.5. The Labour Green Group should read 6% as the proportion of total members, and the Liberal Democrats should read 44%. The report sets out a recommendation to re-establish the committees that we had in 2022-23, as shown in paragraph 4.7, with two amendments to terms of reference, which are explained in paragraph 4.8. As explained in section 5, the leader has advised group leaders of some amendments that he wishes to propose, and these are shown in paragraph 5.2. Therefore, I'm going to ask the leader to introduce his amendment and then ask if he has a seconder. Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Can I also just start by thanking Councillor Hyman? You are quite correct in your interpretation of the Constitution, and I have amended my amendment accordingly, and I hope members will agree that it reflects that adjustment. I have amended what is in your paper to say the proposed amendment is that Council refers the following proposals to the Standards and General Purposes Committee for consideration at their next meeting and recommendation back to Council. I'm now just going to introduce the changes that are being proposed, which standards will then review and bring back to this chamber for final review and assent. The first is to reduce the size of all committees to reflect the reduction in size of this council. As existing members will be aware, but new members may not, the Local Government Boundary Commission evaluated the number of councillors our borough had, and the proposed reduction from 57 to 50 was proposed and agreed by Parliament. As this happened at the point of the election, it makes sense at this point to address the size of committees right at the start. And as all the numbers are based on calculations at 57, they are all rather large at 50. So the first amendment seeks to redress that imbalance. The second part is to change the name of the Audit Committee to the Audit and Risk Management Committee. One of the things that struck me, as well as many of the previous members of the Audit Committee of all parties, was the absence of proactive risk management in several areas being brought before members. Following this proposed change, if it goes through the standards and comes back to council, the new chair and vice chair of the Audit Committee will meet with officers to discuss a more formal revision of the terms of reference to enable this. Now, finally, the last part relates to planning. And considering that we have guests with us tonight, I'm not going to labour this point too much. And it's my hope that if members do have questions, we'll either be able to take them informally here or they'll be dealt with more properly at the Standards Committee that will definitely follow this. And it certainly would be my intent to ensure that that Standards Committee met before any of the existing planning committees were gavelled in. As has been discussed a great deal during the election, unfortunately not without a great deal of politicisation on all sides, Waverley Borough Council is facing the possibility of a designation by the government in terms of its planning arrangements. And I do believe, and I'm sure Councillor Townsend as planning portfolio holder is of the same view, that we must act now and be seen to be acting positively to address this. And it's also been made very clear to us that such proactive action will be taken very seriously by the government too. Part of this designation threat relates to the quality of decision making, and many of you will have heard that in the planning training last week that we could be as few as 8 bad appeals away from our planning powers being severely curtailed. Now, what I'm proposing here is not something that either myself or the executive have come up with out of the ether. These are things that have been proposed by many independent bodies over the last few years, in fact. And certainly we were actually at the point of discussing this when the pandemic hit the last time round. So we're proposing a number of things that the Planning Advisory Service has suggested that we pursue in order to improve the decision making and the quality of that decision making, and also to ensure the probity of councillors who are taking part in those decisions are more effective and you are more protected in what you do. Now, most councils only have one planning committee, with councillors trained appropriately in planning matters, exercising what is called a quasi-judicial function of that council. And right now we have 2 geographically based committees to manage planning applications. Now, there have been many arguments in the past to say that local knowledge is critical to the making of planning decisions in representing local concerns. And honestly, I agree with that interpretation 100%. It is obviously fundamental. It is going to be the reason why many of you stood for election. It will be the thing that many of you want to do, is to make your local mark on a particular planning application or planning decision and to represent what is often extremely strong or polarized views on matters of planning, particularly in your ward, and you will see that right across the borough. Now, the problem we have is that we don't get to set planning policy. It's set by the government. And the geographic committees that we have would be fabulous if the basis for decision making was on what things people didn't like and what things residents didn't support or not. The problem we have is that that is not how planning policy set nationally actually works. And it is not what the role of Waverley Borough Council is in terms of actually enacting those decisions. We have to make sure that planning decisions made in planning committees reflect planning policy, that they are robust if they are challenged on appeal. And let's be honest, most developers will challenge them on appeal. So we have to make sure that our decision-making process is sound. Now, I do want to just challenge a few fallacies that I know kick around councils during elections. I'm sure many of them might be repeated tonight. You bring local information to a planning committee. That's great. And sometimes you might have information that the rest of the committee don't have. But you can always raise that. I mean, most members of this council are not members of planning committees. And so that's how most members will work. They will exercise their rights and obligations as ward members to raise these sorts of issues, to come to committee and explain them. Now, regardless of where you're from in the borough, once you're here, you're also elected to represent Waverley. And you are not helping residents if you are helping the planning balance and the planning policy problems in terms of designation move into the negative for this council. If we lose our ability to make decisions on behalf of residents, we are not helping residents. So what I'm trying to do here is also strengthen the role of the ward councillor. Now, at the moment, you are able to attend planning committees as a ward councillor and you are able to take part and vote in that committee. It is up to your own judgment as to whether you're predetermined or not. And sometimes that predetermination judgment is actually questioned in the appeals process. Now, I have observed councillors who have attended as just a ward member, recused themselves from the committee and spoken at the beginning and end of the committee as per your standard ward member rights, which this is not seeking to modify one little bit. I've observed certainly councillors Merriweather and Clark sitting beside me here, go into a planning committee, not as members of that committee, not voting, eloquently make the case, be able to talk to their residents without predetermining themselves. They can even speak to the press, they can speak to whoever they like, because they are not at risk of putting themselves into jeopardy or planning probity issues. And at the same time, they're also not bringing the council into that same possible threat. So what we're proposing to do here is regularise what ward members can do and can't do. It is to make sure that you as members are protected from potential planning decisions that will predetermine you as part of that process. It is to make sure that planning committees understand their obligations and duties to find out all the information, but it is also to reinforce your duties as ward members to tell planning committees if you have local or other knowledge that is material to that planning balance, and to undertake your duty as ward councillors. Now, there's going to be some debate on this. I'm hoping that perhaps, considering that we're going to be moving this to the standards venue for its debate, that we might not get into the too acrimonious version of this debate right now. I know that it will likely cause a number of people to be concerned. But it is also deeply concerning that we're even in the possibility that due to planning quality, we may lose our ability to make decisions at all. There is one other thing that I am adding into this that is in your papers. I am proposing also to ban executive members from serving on planning committees for many of the same reasons as I've just described. Members of executive have other interactions with the local plan, with people building houses, with our own social housing provision. And in my judgment and the judgment of the Planning Advisory Service, many of these interactions would be improper on a committee. I think, just to make that illustration clear, if the planning portfolio holder is sitting on the planning committee, I think many in the room would assume that she might be speaking with another hat. And so might I be if I was sitting on that committee. And I think it is ethically compromises many members on the executive by being on planning committees. Just also finally, before I offer this up to my seconder to take it forward, I have great faith that the ward councillor model allows ward councillors to make the point. And the way I'm illustrating that to you, many of you who don't know me yet, my ward colleague is Councillor Victoria Keel. She is now also on the executive. So I have just proposed here a ban on the two members of my own ward taking part on planning committees. I am so confident and happy with the way that the ward councillor relationship with planning committees functions and operates, and can see it work in committee, that I am quite content that both of us are excluded from those planning committees while still being able to properly act and support our residents. Now, I'm not therefore making anybody in this room or proposing anybody else in this room do something that I am not doing to myself, and I'm quite comfortable with that. At that point, Madam Mayor, thank you for your indulgence. Thank you, members, and I offer it to my seconder to continue.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Quick to react this time. I'm pleased to.
One moment. Councillor Hyman, is there a point of order?
Sorry, thanks. Point of order under Article 12. I'm not entirely sure anybody knows what we're doing and what we're deciding. I think the leader has just said and spent the last 10 minutes at describing what we're not doing, but what he's going to bring to standards. So that is not about what we're actually doing tonight. And can you please clarify for us, or could he clarify for us, that where we are at the moment is on page 19, the council, the resolution under 1 on page 19, and that we are currently now speaking to an amendment which it's not quite clear whether the amendment replaces that or adds to it, but I think replaces it, so that can be clarified for us. And then that what we are recommending and what the seconder will be speaking to will be an amendment to page 25 and 26, which says that he is suggesting that all of A to H there on 25 and 26 are put off to the next, are referred to the standards committee. which I think would be a mistake, Leader, because I think A should be done now, and I think we should ask the officers whether they'd agree with that. A and B can be done now and should be done now to bring the numbers down, and the rest of it left, but you'd like to think about that. I know you haven't had time, Leader, sorry, I know you haven't had time, Leader, to take into account fully of what situation we're in at the
Councillor
moment.
Hyman. We're just going to hear some advice from Susan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, what's happening, Councillor Hyman, is that the leader has proposed an amendment to the two recommendations on page 19. And if that's seconded and if that's agreed by council, then the recommendations will change in line with what has just appeared on the screen in front of you. So it will be the two substantive recommendations, which are on page 19 of your report. And if agreed by council, there will be an additional recommendation that the Standards and General Purposes Committee receive a report at the next meeting to consider changes to the Constitution as has been set out in this amendment.
Thank you. The difficulty I had was at 1.2 on page 19. It refers to, well, in fact, 1.1 and 1.2 refers to paragraphs 5.6 and 5.7, which I couldn't find. And I don't know whether that's still in. To clarify, what is being proposed is that the 1.1, 1.2 on page 19 are scrapped. Is that correct? That those two recommendations are scrapped and replaced, or are they added to?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they are to be added to. Madam Mayor, in introducing the item, did correct a couple of typos in the recommendation and made clear that recommendation 1.1 relates to paragraph 4.7 of the report, and that recommendation 1.2 relates to paragraph 4.8 of the report. Those two recommendations stand. If this amendment, which has been proposed, is seconded and agreed, then recommendation 1.3 will be an additional recommendation.
Thank you. So it has been seconded. So, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hyman, for making things so clear. Since tonight's council papers were published, it's fair to say that my email inbox contained a flurry of emails from Farnham residents, members, councillors and residents of Farnham who know the planning system quite well, talking about geographical representation, local knowledge and expertise. Now, those who sat in the planning induction course last week, led by Gillian McInnes, will have heard her say that the clock is ticking on the issue of the quality, not the speed, the quality of our planning decisions, and that we need to act soon. Our new Deputy Mayor, Councillor John Ward, said it was the best planning course he had attended. The Planning Advisory Service are recommending have recommended one non-geographical committee. But as we have so many applications, to keep the speed, we need to have two. It seems to me to be a little known fact that ward councillors, whether members of the planning committees or not, can address the committee for 4 minutes before the application has been debated and 4 minutes after the committee and other speakers have finished. This is a very powerful tool and is the way of representing your ward members and residents. And it is a way of councillors using their local knowledge and expertise to influence the committee, especially if your argument is powerful and addresses the planning considerations. This means for our Farnham residents group, for instance, that we have 13 ward councillors who can address the planning committees. I am pleased that this is now going to Standards and General Purposes Committee, because I may have found it difficult to support it otherwise. And I am also pleased that the committee is chaired or is going to be chaired by Councillor Andy MacLeod, who is an experienced councillor who is well versed in the planning matters. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Peter Martin.
Well, Madam Mayor, good evening. May I also be among the first to congratulate you on your election as mayor. As we've heard, you've served many times from that very chair during the reign of the late Queen. It will be interesting to see how many more times you do so under the reign of our new king. Now, with regard to the changes that the leader proposes, I welcome the recommendation that the changes do go to the Standards and General Purposes Committee. My speech tonight was all around that constitutional position, and I thought it was wrong to bring such deep changes directly to this full council. So I welcome that. I could make many points. I will simply say, of course, a lot of debate will take place at the Standards and General Purposes Committee and at the next council. And the leader and the deputy leader have already rehearsed many of the arguments. I happen to disagree with many of the interpretations that they have. I think that the role of the average councillor will be diminished by these proposals. And I think that the geographical element of planning committees that we have today is good, and I think is welcomed, or has been welcomed warmly by most councillors in the past, and I believe may do so again in the future. But that is all now to go to the Standards and General Purposes Committee, and I welcome that. Really then what we get to is that then the Appendix 2 that we have before us in terms of nominations refers to the proposed structure as it would have been. I presume that there is an alternative paper which will identify the appointments to the committees as they are today and as they will continue at least for the very near future. And I presume that will be circulated. So I can just say that I am very pleased with the development tonight, and I welcome it, as do my Conservative colleagues. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still confused about this because paragraph 4.7 that we've got there on, somebody give me the page number 4. Yeah, at page 21, 22. Requires 15 councillors on each of the planning committees. This is going to be done, I mean, presumably the first Western and Eastern planning committees that we have will be done under the existing, at least be done under the old system. They'll stay the same until we've had a standards meeting to look at this properly, and then brought to another council meeting, possibly July or even October. So there's 15 councillors. The recommendation 1.1, therefore, is that we act as though we've still got 57 seats and 57 people in the chamber, because that's what 4.7 is doing. I would be much happier if we were to change to the numbers with from reducing from 90 to 78, which some of you should know what I'm talking about there, that has been worked out for to be proportionate to the drop from 57 to 50 members, which is 50 is what we've got now. Somewhere in here is a table of what the numbers would be, and to account for the fact there's only 50 of us, and I think we should be agreeing that instead of 1.1. Because I think it would be a lot easier for officers. I think it would require less changes in future. And as it changes to numbers, I think it is perfectly possible for us to accommodate that within part 2 of the Constitution, Article 14.2b1, which is the exceptions which we are allowed to do. So would the leader like to perhaps consider revising 1.1 to refer to whatever section it is that gives us the new lower numbers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hyman.
Do you understand what I said there?
Well, I'm just going to ask you, are you proposing an amendment to the amendment?
I'd like the leader to do it himself, if he would, rather than me, because whenever I propose anything, it gets defeated, but just because people do it for the sheer hell of it, if I may say that. so I don't want this to go horribly wrong by people being silly.
Thank you. I'm just trying to keep it as brief as possible. We have a public gallery. Councillor Follows.
Thank you. We have no idea whether this council will be as bloody-minded as the last council, Jerry, when it comes to your particular proposals. But
You've looked at the committee allocations.
my only concern was that as the Constitution made non-minor changes to the Constitution, be forced to go to standards, and you yourself highlighted this point, and there's no elaboration as to what non-minor is. I need to ask the advice of the monitoring officer, because if this council right here and now agrees that the interpretation of the new committee roster is non-minor and we can move through that, I'm very happy to propose that amendment so that we can do that bit properly, if that's something that we actually can do.
Thank you indeed. Councillor Follows. Susan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Hyman is suggesting a change to the Constitution, and Article 14 correctly says that changes to the Constitution that are other than non-minor should be considered by the Standards and General Purposes Committee. So I don't think that's something that full council can decide tonight.
Then, based on the advice of our monitoring officer, and I appreciate Councillor Hyman, I would love to do that too, but you open that particular genie and unfortunately you get everything that goes with it. So we'll take it to standards.
Sorry, point of order, if I may, because
Order. I'm going to now call for a vote on the amendment. Are there any other speakers? New speakers? Yes, Councillor Munro.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and congratulations, like everybody else. I'm really pleased about that. I do think it's up to some of us, and I know that some people are deeply unhappy about the proposed changes to the planning committee, that we should actually, as it were, show our teeth here before just sending it off to the Standards Committee. I approve of it going to the Standards Committee, but I think the Standards Committee should not only have the words of the leader ringing in their ears, but words of other people who have fundamental disagreements. And my disagreement is that I'm sorry, I'm not convinced by the leader's arguments. I believe they would actually result in a diminution of ward councillors' powers, responsibilities, and the esteem which they are hopefully held by their residents. I'm just not convinced that these changes, which bar them actually from participating in our formal committees, I just don't see how you can square that circle as well. I'm sure these arguments, Standing Committee, will be explored in much greater depth, but it's right that that committee knows what the temperature of this council is, and I hope other people will speak. Who knows? But I've made my point, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I should have congratulated you when I first rose. We had happy memories when I was mayor and you were the mayor of Godalming. I particularly remember a hospital visit, but we won't mention that now. Can I say that I'm delighted that this matter is going to the committee. And I just wonder whether when we get the report, we could cover other options. One option is that we reinstate the main planning committee that dealt with major applications. Because it seems to me there are two things that are a problem with the special measures. One is that the quality of decisions in respect of major applications had a lot to be desired. It was not good. And of course, we abolished that committee when COVID came. And then when COVID was over, we decided not to reinstate it. And then to have Eastern and Western to deal with the more local stuff, where it could be quicker, in my view, because the problem of Committee A and B is that you're going to have to do far more site visits and everything else to familiarize yourself with bits of the borough you don't know so well. And I think that would be useful also for the report so that people have got it, is to reflect on when we did it in 2016, I think it was. We introduced a committee A and B, which proved to be a disaster. And that wasn't with that from memory was not when we had barring of councillors to represent their own wards. So I think it would be useful not to ignore history. Doesn't mean that if it was wrong then it's wrong now, but at least I think we ought to debate other models so that we can come up with the best model to ensure that we are better at planning than we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge, Councillor Coburn, then Councillor Beeman after that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations. I hope you have a very happy year. I'm sure you will. I'm backing Councillor Munro, really. I wasn't going to say very much having gone back to the Standards Board, but I have strong reservations about this. Having lived through every other sort of entity of committee, you know, we've tried them all, and I actually think this is actually trying to solve the wrong problem. We've got huge problems in planning. Just tinkering with the names of the planning committee is not actually, I don't think, going to serve the situation well. We had these two committees, as Councillor Goodridge has just said, and it was at the time when I think it was Prescott who wanted to concrete over the southeast, and every field was up for grabs. And we drove all over the borough looking at fields, and would you believe it, one field looked very much like the next field, which was very much like the next field. But what was so important was the context of that field, because going to Alfold, it was very different from going to South Cranley, which was also very different from going to North Cranley. And when you get into the complexities of Farnham, with all its nooks and crannies, you really are getting into real deep trouble. You're all going to have to learn every single neighbourhood plan if you're on the committee, because we've just had 2 appeal decisions where it was the neighbourhood plan that succeeded, not our development plan as a whole, because the local plan, as we know, is at the moment in abeyance. So I would like to get planning right, don't get me wrong. I would love to get it. I don't think this is the answer. I really don't. I think it's sort of a symbol, you know, a futile gesture, as Blackadder said. You know, I just don't think this is where the main issue is. And I think we've got to get back to a much better relationship between members and officers all the way through the process, and certainly through the reports and into committee. Because so often we get surprises at committee, and then the officers get surprises at the committee. And I can remember a time, and it's not looking back with rose-tinted specs, it was very easy. We just picked the phone up, or we were in here and we just discussed these matters. And I think, you know, we do have to look at planning. I'm not naive, it's in a mess and we've got to get it right. But I do think that local knowledge, the context, the history, all of that is incredibly important to every single planning decision. And quite frankly, it is only people from that area who can actually put in the knowledge, the wisdom, including residents who get in touch with you, you know. And I really think to cut that out at this stage is not going to solve the issue, and it's just going to, I think Councillor Munro said, diminish our role as councillors, as we are seen in the community. And I just think it's the wrong thing to do. But it's going to standards, which is the right thing to do. And I hope we have a full debate and a full report, because, you know, tinkering at the moment is not going to solve all the issues we have. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman, do you have another point of order?
It is a point of order, thanks. I mean, I'm really concerned that a misinterpretation has been put upon the...
Would you mind telling us what your point of order is, please?
Well, yes, it's a going into a decision making without the knowledge clause, Article 12. We're required the correct information before we make a decision, and members have been provided with incorrect information. A false assumption has been made that the clause 14.2 I referred to prevents us from agreeing to reduce the committees from 57 to 50. I do not believe it does. I please do want to discuss this properly rather than just shutting it out, because otherwise we've got to take all of these committee appointments, which have got 11 people on the planning committees, and turn it into 15 here now this evening, Really? I mean, I know that's a knee-jerk reaction. No, we don't, but I think we do. If
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to comment.
and I'd be happy to speak to the monitoring officer about clause 14.2 because it was only 7 months ago we invented it and it's fresh in our minds. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure I'm entirely sure that the point of order that's being raised by Councillor Hyman, but there isn't any need to make any changes to the committees this evening. If this amendment is agreed, then the proposal will be to establish the committees that you currently have and the terms of reference and sizes of those committees exactly as you currently have them.
Thank you. I'm going to Councillor Beeman next.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And may I offer my congratulations to you. Right. I welcome the reference of this matter to the Standards Committee, and I sincerely hope that it will look at all different models, as Councillor Goodrich has pointed out. But mine is a simple question. The next meeting of the Western Planning Committee is due on the 14th of June. Now, that's rather near to me, and well, of course, in fact, we have a briefing session normally on the 25th of May. Now the question, and we all know that this council has already been referred, not just to quality, but for the speed of applications. And if we're not going to have a meeting on the 14th of June, that's going to not help that cause, is it? So can you please clarify what's going to happen on the 14th of June, somebody?
Councillor Peter Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am now confused, and I do apologise for this. The council resolved 1.1 that the committees are set out in paragraph 7 be established for the 2024 municipal year. If we turn to 4.7, we see that the number of people on those committees are as we had them last year and as we start now. So it will not be in line with the appendix that we have been circulated with tonight. And the next one is 1.2 says that the planning committees will be changed and in line with our paragraph 4.8. That merely changes them for geographical purposes and puts the right wards into the right eastern and western planning. So I'm now confused because it seems that we're going to go pro tem with the changed proposals. I don't understand what's happening.
That's all right, Councillor Peter Martin. We have the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to be clear, Appendix 10 relates to agenda item, sorry, Appendix 2 relates to agenda item 13 on the nomination. So we will come on to that when we take agenda item 13. All that's being decided on this agenda item is the size of the committees, not the nominations, and the proposal is that they remain the same.
So just to clarify, it's the numbers will be the same as they have been for the last year, and that will continue on.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Recommendation 1.1 is that you establish committees the same size as they have been for the last year in accordance with paragraph 4.7.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more speakers. So Councillor Follows, would you like to sum up?
So thank you, everyone. I'm sorry that was so confusing. I think that was made more confusing than it needed to be in a number of ways. I think in practice, what we're doing is keeping the old committee numbers until we refer to it at standards. In terms of Councillor Hyman, I think your other question is, won't we have lots of vacancies if we do that? Well, firstly, we will, but there's, I believe, a section in there that allows appointments to be delegated to the monitoring officer so they can be dealt with. And I believe there would only be an actual problem if any of those committees were actually not quorate, and at which point they wouldn't be able to sit. So as long as we've met those criteria, then I can't personally see why there would be any problems constitutionally with doing that. Don't get me wrong. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we can't just do this now, but I'm not the one that made that point. That was you, Jerry. So yeah. So anyway, I'm now moving the amended recommendation as stated, and I hope council can support so that both the members of this chamber and those who have endured this in the public gallery can go have a drink. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hyman, do you have a new point of order that you can illustrate, please?
Yes, again, it's about informing members before they take a vote, because it seems to me that people are going to agree to go back to a 57 councillor system when we've only got 50 of us.
Point of
And
order,
we don't have to do that. And the leader has again repeated a
Councillor
false
Hyman,
statement.
Councillor Hyman, I wonder if we could cut that short, please. We have a public gallery with us. I just want go back to the leader to clarify that, and then we will move to the vote on the amendment.
As long as the committees are quorate, whether they're done on the basis of 50 or 57, I mean, the actual council committee size itself, full council, is not amended by this because it's effectively set by the default amount of councillors that are on this authority. So that was effectively set by the Local Government Boundary Commission. We are only empowered here effectively to change the committees that are subordinate to full council. So as long as they're quorate, they're lawful. And that is all that's being proposed here. If I was standing here trying to say, well, actually council should be 52 members or 55 or back to 57, well, that obviously wouldn't be correct because only Parliament are able to amend the size of the local authority, and that would be ultra vires. So I don't think this is as confusing as it's been made out to be. It will all go to standards and be reviewed in due course, at which point I'm sure we'll have much of this debate over and over again. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So may I now see a show of hands in favour of the amendment, please? And for those against? And are there any abstentions? The amendment is carried. So we now have a new substantive motion for the establishment of committees for 2023 to 24. Taking account of the amendment, do members wish to comment at all on the revised recommendation? I can't see any speakers, so may I move that recommendation? Thank you. Agenda item number 13, Councillor Martin. Members, the report sets out the revised political proportionality of the council in appendix number 1. Please refer to the first and second page that show that proportionality and the allocation of committee seats based on a total of 90 committee seats, reflecting the decision just taken. Appendix 2, which has been circulated by email and tabled, shows the group leaders' nominations for appointments to committees and also nominations for committee chairs and vice chairs. Does anyone wish to speak on the political proportionality or the group leaders' nominations? Oh, I can't see anybody. That's all right. So the recommendation is that the council agrees the allocation of committee seats to political groups as shown in appendix 1, the nominations of the group leaders to fill those seats, and the nominations of group leaders and
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just explain that because of the amendment to the previous item, there are some consequential changes to the recommendation for this item too. The recommendations are up on the screen in front of you. Rather than you being asked to allocate nominations to seats, you're being asked to allocate the nominations that have been made and also to provide a delegation to the Executive Head of Legal and Democratic Services to resolve any outstanding adjustments required to ensure that the total allocations is equal to the number of seats available, and to make the nominations shown in Appendix 2, but to provide a delegation to the Executive Head of Legal and Democratic Services to appoint any remaining outstanding vacancies arising from the previous decision, and then to make the nominations of chairs and vice chairs as set out in the report, and to consider the appointment of independent persons as set out in the report. Thank you.
thank you. So you have that recommendation. Councillor Martin.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much for that clarification. I am in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? So would you signify whether you support that recommendation, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. So using the new gavel, I now declare this meeting closed. But before that, I invite the guests in the public gallery and any here to join me downstairs. And councillors, would you just hold on a moment until we have left the room, and you'll also be allowed to come downstairs for a little entertainment. So thank you very much.
Please rise while the mayor leaves the chamber. Could I please ask if you could just remain in the chamber for a few minutes, just until the mayor is ready to receive you in the Borough Hall? And please ensure that you take all of your personal belongings with you.